Jason, it looks like we have quite the attendance. Just give me the nod when you would like to start.
Okay, it looks like Gary's on too, so he can do the other part as well.
Oh, good. Shall we? Go ahead.
Sure, let's just get out of the way.
Okay. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedure authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the Fairfax County Athletic Council needs to make certain findings and determination for the record. It is a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the Fairfax County Athletic Council is participating in this member from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating, that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at appropriate volume for all the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you're participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So Jason.
All right, good evening, everybody. Braddock District, Marcia Pape Daniels.
This is Marcia Pape. I'm participating from my office in the Braddock District.
Thanks, Marcia. And Braddock alternate, Marco Mira. Drainsville District, Greg Beckwith.
I'm here. I am participating from my home in Great Falls, Virginia, within the Drainsville District. Thank you.
And Drainsville alternate, Brian Lewis. Hunter Mill District, Jeremy Lee. Or alternate, Harold Leff. Lee District, Lisa Mickey. Lee alternate, Bill Bright. Mason District, Barbara Lowry.
I'm here from my home. Can I mention that I thought the Champions of Character presentation was very nice? Maybe you're going to come to that later, but I was very, very pleased with it.
Good to hear. Thanks, Barbara. Mount Vernon District, Lester Munson.
I am here, and I also thought the Champions of Character was terrific. I'm at my office in Washington, D.C.
Great. Thanks, Lester. And Mount Vernon alternate, Bob Kirk.
I'm here. I'm taking the call from my car on I-95.
Thank you, sir. Providence District, Steve McLaughlin.
I'm here from my home in the Providence District.
Thanks, Steve. And alternate, Kelly Ego-Aswala. Springfield District, Mike Thompson.
Yes, sir. This is Mike Thompson from my office in Alexandria.
Thank you. And alternate, Mark Hilburn. Sully District, Gary Flather.
Gary Flather here from my home in Centerville in the Sully District.
Thank you. And Sully alternate, Mark Abbott. Diversity at large, Mark Fernandez. Or alternate, Eric Sohn. Member at large, Catherine Quinn. Or alternate, Anne-Marie Swope.
Anne-Marie Swope here from Ruston.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Town of Clifton, Jeff Stein. Town of Herndon, Roland Taylor.
This is Roland Taylor at my home in Herndon, Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Town of Vienna, Tom Hanton.
This is Tom. I'm here at my home in Vienna.
Thank you, sir. Baseball Council, Rob Honey.
Rob here from the Westfield High School baseball practice field.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Basketball Council, Steve Bergstrom. Or alternate, Stu Clark. Fast pitch softball, Susie Williamson. Or alternate, Ryan Buchanan. Football Council, Mark Miena. And alternate, Ted Hollingsworth.
Ted Hollingsworth here from my home in Oakton.
Thanks, Ted. Lacrosse Council, Marianne Wagner.
Marianne here from her office in Alexandria.
Thanks, Marianne. And alternate, Dave Paddock. Slow pitch softball, Christine Iddup. Soccer Council, Lula Bauer.
I'm here in my home in Alexandria, Virginia.
And alternate, Trish Moxie.
I'm here in my home in Springfield.
Thanks, Trish. Volleyball Council, Rob Bailey. And Anne Marie still here. Women's Sports, Jenny Cantwell. Or alternate Hillary Richardson.
Hillary is here calling from her vehicle on 7.
Thank you, Hillary. Fairfax County Park Authority, Kurt Lewis.
Here from my office in Fairfax.
Thanks, Kurt. Fairfax County School Board, Megan McLaughlin. I believe it's going to be a few minutes late. Bill Curran.
Bill can't attend tonight.
Okay. And Vicky Garner is here.
From Gatehouse.
Gotcha. Thanks, Vicky. And NCS, Lloyd Tucker.
Good evening,
Yes.
Lloyd here.
Sarah Allen. Keisha Dodson. Karen Yavisado.
I'm here from my home in Leesburg.
And Mark Martino.
I am here from home.
All right. That's it, Lula. And we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason. So at this point, I will pass the virtual gavel over to Gary Flather, Vice Chairman, so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Fairfax County Athletic Council.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Remember
Are there
to
any
identify
objections?
yourself.
No
was me.
objections, the motion is approved.
Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels this emergency procedure. The fact that we're meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I moved that the state of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the Fairfax County Athletic Council to physically assemble and unable for the public to physically attend any such meeting that is such FOIA usual procedures which require the physical assembly of the Fairfax County Athletic Council and the physical presence of the public cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further moved that the Fairfax County Athletic Council may conduct this meeting electronically via Microsoft Teams, and that the public may access the meeting by calling 1-751-429-5982.
Second that motion. Oops.
Phone conference ID is 359-519-830 #.
Now I'll second it.
All right. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Great. So we need to dispense the FOIA unusual procedure to assure continuity and government continuity operations. Finally, it is next required that all the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity for Fairfax County government and or statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Fairfax County Athletic Council lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities.
And I'll second that too.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any objections? That motion is also approved.
Whew. So are there any, welcome everyone. Are there any citizens that are here to address the council? Jason, can you tell?
I'm not aware of any, but if anyone's called in that would like to address the council.
Okay. Anyone? Okay. Are there any presentations to the council?
I don't believe there are.
All right. Administrative items. So we'd like to approve the February 16th minutes. Is there a motion?
Madam Chairman,
Motion to
Rowan
approve.
Taylor, make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Second that motion.
Any objections? So moved. So the next agenda item is future athletic council meetings in person or virtually. I would just like to say this, that once the CDC and once the mask mandate was lifted, my background in nursing and my role with my organization as the COVID point of contact, I thought it was necessary to continue to meet virtually until there's more data that's provided once the kids went back to school and the masks were down. So I'd like to open it up to any conversations in terms of the council's feeling of meeting in person, virtually, or hybrid.
Steve's got his hand raised. Steve McLaughlin.
Sure. Well, I got my hand up, so I'll go first. So as much as I'd like to visit with everybody in person, separate and apart from the things that you mentioned, Lula, I think the ability to have virtual hearings makes for one Fairfax, broader inclusiveness, diversity of opinions, and it makes it so much easier to be a volunteer in the county. Anything we can do to preserve some means like this, I think, is an effort that we should undertake.
Looks like Marcia Pape and then Mike Thompson.
This is Marcia. I agree with what Steve said. I have also noticed in other organizations that since we've gone to virtual meetings, the attendance has been better. Jason, is there any indication of how attendance has been since we've been meeting virtually?
I would agree with your statement that it seems to be pretty consistent attendance than prior to COVID and everything like that. We would have some meetings where we didn't have quorums in person, so I do remember those times.
Okay. I mean, I support continuing to meet virtually for that reason and the reasons that Steve mentioned. Thank you.
Mike Thompson.
Yeah, I'll be slightly contrarian. The only reason we can meet virtually is because of the pandemic emergency. We don't have legal authority to meet virtually absent the declaration that there is an emergency. There is, and I would recommend that we consider a legal opportunity that we can adopt a policy that members could join virtually to a meeting, but the legal requirement under Virginia law, because this is something the Park Authority went through, that's the legal requirement is that there still has to be a quorum in person in a public location in a noticed meeting, and that people who are not able to attend would be able to attend virtually. There's a limit on the number of times that can happen. I believe off the top of my head, it's 25% of the meetings for unexcused, like for any excuse whatsoever in a given year. And I believe that on top of that, with no limit, if you have a disability or health issue that makes it necessary to go. I mean, there's some particulars to that and how it works, but we have to understand that we're not just the whatever athletic club. It's not just Burke Athletic Club or Braddock Road Youth Club or Lee Mount Vernon Sports Club or whatever. These are public meetings, and we do have legal requirements that we have to contend with and have to abide by. I also think that long term, and beyond that, my experience is that this works really well when folks know each other relatively well. But as new people have come onto the council, forming relationships with them and getting to know them is far more difficult virtually. So while I have no problem meeting in person at all. I think meeting in person is a good thing. As long as there's this declaration of emergency, I'm willing to continue this process. But absent that declaration of emergency, we're legally required to meet in person if we're going to meet.
Looks like Gary Flather and then Steve McLaughlin. I'm not sure if that's an old hand.
It's a new one.
Okay, cool.
Gary's up.
Yeah, so I like what Stephen and Marcia are saying, but I understand what Mike's saying, and I support following the rules. Can we make a recommendation to Fairfax County Legal to adopt a new policy? I know that probably will take quite some time, but every organization in the world is going virtual these days. It seems like the direction that everybody's going. I don't see any reason why Fairfax County cannot adopt some new policy based on needs and and current structure.
Gary, I'll just jump in real quick and say that I believe it's actually a state law. So I believe it is fair. I think that the state law gives you the option to adopt this hybrid ability. So I don't think it's just a Fairfax, at least that's the way it was explained to me. We actually had an in-person board meeting and adopted the policy at the Park Authority.
So is it something that we can go to the Fairfax County legal to go to the state legal? I mean, I would assume everything goes through some type of chain of command. So would it be in our position, the council, to just make a recommendation to consider an alternative?
Yeah, I guess this is what I'm saying. I believe there would need to be a change in legislation. This isn't just the way it was explained to me is this is a legislative requirement under Virginia law that has been modified to allow for a hybrid meeting, assuming that there's things like a quorum in place and all those things, but that this is not a Fairfax County Board of Supervisors issue, but a Virginia FOIA public meeting issue legally.
Gary, I'll bring it to our legal department and get clarification and send you guys something in writing what we can and can't do.
At least that would put us in the direction and of where to go.
Okay.
Sorry to take up your time, Steve.
No, that's right. I was heading in that direction too. I believe Mike's right. We're talking about a legal change. To make clear, my point was, since I think we should be working towards that goal eventually, I see no rush to get back to in-person meetings or exclusively in-person meetings. I like Mike's suggestion on the trying to keep participation up even when the in-person meetings are required. But it just seems to me, if there was going to be a change in legislation, there would have to be someone submitting a bill in January of next year to do that. I don't think because the Fairfax County Athletic Council wants it to happen, that'll happen. But I do think that every community-based advisory group has got to be screaming about how much better it is when you're able to do this remotely and people don't have to travel to meetings, and how much more accessible it is. That, the underlying purpose of the Sunshine Act would actually be furthered if they allowed this to occur. So that's going to take a while. And, sooner or later this fall or this summer, we're going to be back to in-person meetings. I'm pretty sure the county attorney will say the party's over, but that doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. Right. So if there is this groundswell, we should get on the right side of it. If there's not a groundswell, we're going to be having in-person meetings really soon, and it's not going to change. That's my 2 cents again. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I absolutely agree with everyone. I think Karen, we appreciate you taking this to the next step. But the other point that I would like to make perfectly clear with everyone, we all do live, a lot of us live quite a distance from the government center, and with the price of gas these days, and it's going to continue to go up, it's another good reason that we stay this course until we hear anything further.
Hey, time and money are two big things.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Is there any other discussion? So action item is Karen's going to take this to another level. As far as my report, I am going to speak to what a couple people have already spoken to, and that is the Champion Character Award presentation. That was amazing. I have to tell you that literally gave me chills, made me very emotional to watch that, and just all the different levels and the voiceover, and then just the recipients, being able to see them in different elements, I just thought was so powerful and so impactful. And Chris and his staff did an amazing job. I've had a conversation with Chris, And I actually suggested that perhaps that's the way we move forward with the champion of characters. We have a memory, and just the way that it was all put together, I thought was just incredible. And then when they broke down the different districts, and you saw the districts, and you had that WWW voiceover introducing all the districts and the recipients. It was amazing. And I just think he did such an incredible job. I think everybody did an incredible job. So I do want to see if it's a possibility to move forward with that format. So that's what that was just what I wanted to let everybody know. I'm just like, I was so incredibly proud to be the chairwoman of this council, and I was so proud of that video that they put together. So that is my report. Now on to committee reports. Communication with Fairfax County Partners. Is that Gary?
It is
Committee
indeed.
reports?
Yes. This is the communication with the Fairfax County Partners, FCPS, FCPA, NCS, and the community users. The last meeting we had was February 10th, and we deferred having another meeting until after a meeting was held between NCS and Vicki Gardner's group. So I think what the way I'd like to start the meeting is just to get a report, and because there are some rumors out there, and before I start talking about any rumors, I think the committee as well as the council would like to know what came out of that meeting. And if you can, Vicki, if you can share with us, and Lloyd, if you can share what the strategy is from that meeting.
Sure, I'm happy to join in. I think we had a very productive meeting between NCS and community use. Present were Karen, Mark, and Keisha, and myself and Paul Hatcher in the meeting. We discussed communication, which I know has been one of the main concerns that has been brought forth. We have also established quite a few different policies, which we've implemented March 1st. So we're 16 days into it, and I think with great and outstanding success. We established an email, which would be a hotline email just between us and NCS, where everything is going into one location. Community use now has 3 individuals monitoring that email. I think the response time has been 20 minutes, maybe, from the time we get the email to a response back. Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've been extremely responsive, of everything, and it seems to be work. The communications that we've had from FCPS schools and users has been nothing short of positive, for that. I think we have tackled a lot of the communication issues. So I feel very positive about it. We have another meeting set up between Mr. Plattenberg, Lloyd, and I believe Karen will be there. Mark Martino, myself, and Paul Hatcher will be on the 22nd, I believe, and we'll discuss next steps or any issues that may be approached at the time. And also from our meeting, we discussed having future meetings, probably on a quarterly basis, among the leadership. And then eventually, after that, after we we'll have our teams meet and discuss the usage from there. So that's my summary. So NCS, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I can just say, with every change, there are some changes. There's going to be some bumps, and we're going through some bumps, but we are continuing to work with schools, with Vicki's office, to work through those communication issues. And it's just, like Vicki knows, there's some people who have been doing one way for a long time, so it's going to take a while to change over to the new system, and that is communication is going. Everything is going through the community use office now, and so we're tracking things. We're monitoring data, our data on both sides, and we'll continue. Just try to streamline as much as possible, so to alleviate any impact to the community. So.
Yeah, if I might interject here a little bit, the main reason why we did this was community use is ultimately responsible for all usage as non-compulsory. Where we were finding some of the disconnects, which I do agree that there was some disconnects, was for the communications between the school and the users and NCS and ourselves. And there seemed to be like, whenever you have the old childhood game where one person whispers one thing, by the end is totally different, was what kind of we were having. Some miscommunications, part of the communication was occurring and part wasn't. So by the time community use got involved, if we were involved around it, we didn't have a time to react. Some of the issues that we are reacting to and the data that we've had for the last 16 days is just phenomenal. It's given us a view of NCS's side that we didn't have before. Because what we've asked NCS to do and what they've complied, and it's been, like I said, very positive, that NCS will make us the center before they go to the schools. And the schools make us the center before it goes back to NCS. That way we're a part of it. I can't fix problems if I'm unaware of them. And that's what has helped us tremendously in being in part of this process. Because what we found is, and I'll admit this, some FCPS schools had some blocks in there that should not have been blocks. So we've addressed them. And I'm looking, by me having firsthand looked at this data, I'm able to see maybe some of the areas that we could open up that was not open up before. And we're having a much broader look at the situation. So I think the end result will be much more effective communication that's moving forward. On a different note, besides the committee, we do have a meeting set up for this Friday with design and construction, because we saw that is a problem also by having this data coming in of the blocks that's put in. We want to make that a living document between community use and design and construction to where we have real-time updates. And that's one of the areas that we're focusing on with our meeting that community use has with design and construction. Just an internal processing meeting, so we can iron out the communication between the projects and how we're moving forward. So I'm excited about the level of communications that we're having, and I think we're making some great strides that we'll be able to build in the future, because the bottom line is there's not enough fields and gyms to meet all the needs, period. There's a finite number. So we need to utilize those fields and those gyms in the best way possible to serve all of Fairfax County in the best way that we can. It bothers me, and I said this in our meeting that we had with NCS, greatly when I drive by a field and I see it empty. I'd like to see them all full as often as we can. And when I do see it empty, I want to know why. Because I know there's an abundance of users out there that are not getting the space that they need. So I'm looking into finding out why we have those answers or why we have those problems. And a shout out from Bill. He made me say congratulations to Madison for their state championship. He's made me promise this afternoon when I met with him that I would shout that out. So.
And I'll just jump back in, Gary, and say that, I don't think 2 weeks of data is enough for me to give a definitive process is going to be successful or not. For us, as you guys know, NCS, we're all about relationship building, building relationships and with the schools and the ADs and everything else, and being responsive to our customers and making sure when things don't seem right, we're going to push back and ask why and ask what is the reason and how do we work the solution. I think Vicky and her staff and over the last 2 weeks have really done a nice job at being responsive, and But we, you know, the bottom line for both of us is we don't want our customer to hurt, you know, to have a negative impact on this new process. So I think I personally, and Lloyd, you can speak differently. I personally need it to go a little longer to see if it's really going to be successful. So because you know, we hear things from other sides too, you know, that we need to continue to work on. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, you know, we maybe look at it over a couple of seasons, you know, as opposed to just one at the end of the winter season. So I agree, Karen.
So just piggyback on this a little bit. I do have a couple of questions. One, Vicky, you made a comment towards the end there about bringing in design and construction. You know, at the athletic council meetings, we've been asking for this for the last couple of years, but I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. You said you're having a meeting on Friday. Did I hear you say that this meeting is so that you can define problems internally, or are you going to share that working document with the users as has been done for years in the past?
Oh, absolutely. We always share the grid, the DNC grid, with NCS, and ultimately, I believe to the chair always receives a copy of it when it's submitted. We're also going to put it in Google Docs, so it'll be a living document, you know, but I want to make sure what you see is what it is. And it is fluid. It is extremely fluid and because of bids going out with contractor issues, some of the problems that we have now with start dates is supply and demand. You know, the contractors are having a little bit of problem getting all the supplies that they need to do the work that they've been contracted to do. So that will adjust our times. And that's my conversation with them on Friday, as I want it to be as close to accurate as possible. You know, if they have a delay of 2 weeks, let me know. You know, and we need to adjust in our blocks and talk to NCS and tell them that we have a 2-week extension, and because that could be more usage there. So we definitely, and design and construction has had a pretty much an changeover of personnel. So we have some new persons that are not familiar with our practices, and that's one of the reasons why we're having a meeting on Friday to go over what community use does and how we represent to the community and to all users, internal and external.
Okay, so that I think that's good to hear, and I think the members of the council will appreciate that, because we've always said that document, we understand school projects as well or better than anybody, us the users. We understand that, but we also understand, and Rob Honey had brought this up several years ago, where schools were shut down completely, and through Rob Honey's efforts, we were able to open portions of the fields to be able to participate by simply moving and repositioning equipment for whatever construction was going on, so that we didn't have to shut the entire school down. And that's one of the things, Vicki, that we've done in years past, is included certain members of the community users to be involved with some of those design and construction, community use, FCPS, FCPA, and be involved with some of those meetings so that we can provide our sport background influence on what activities are happening. So if you're saying that that's what's going to come out of this meeting, that you're going to share this living document, I would just also recommend that a small group of the council be included with some of those meetings, so that we can share some of the concerns and ideas that we have that may help to increase the usage of fields and gyms when certain projects are going on.
I understand that, and Karen brought that point up in our 24th meeting about when designing and planning is going in effect of how to interact and how to protect basically the usage of the fields and some of the strategic areas that we have that can be protected in the planning stage. Now, my communication with NCS will be after the planning stage, but I do believe that, and Karen, I talked to Jeff about that, and I believe that there was some communications, but we're going to talk about that further on the 22nd, of how we can better do that as the development and plans are going in place. Falls Church was a great example of that situation, for that. But what I like for the committee to understand and to accept is that I'm an advocate for you. And I am an advocate for all community use. So when I'm at the design and construction meetings, I do advocate for you and I do bring it in. By us having the living document, you'll be able to see that, and going forth. And I think that if we have spaces legitimately needs to be blocked off because safety and security has determined that to be a hazard, then we need to have those discussions. But I know that we've worked out, like with Herndon, where the county put in and built the pathway. We can do that again, but it does come down to the matter of funding for some of these items, where we have to build pathways and things of that nature, which I definitely can advocate and bring you in those situations and get you at the table. So I will keep you as informed as I possibly can.
Well, I think everybody will appreciate that. It'll be nice to see that living, working document again. And to be truthful, Vicki, I know you said that that's been part of the process. We haven't seen that document, honestly, in a couple of years. I don't know where the ball dropped, but I think about 6 months ago, we did get an update from NCS after one of our council meetings, but that's neither here nor there. If we're going forward in the right direction, I think that's a great thing. I also want to go back to the comment that you made about the policies. You said you've implemented several policies. Are these policies something that the community users, the athletic council at a minimum is going to be able to see these policies and what they are? I know there's a lot of rumors out there, and I know the idea of taking some time to make sure we get through the bumps, like Karen said, and Lloyd, no offense, but I'm gonna just speak on behalf of myself and say I think monitoring this over a couple seasons is too long, because the impact to the community users has been significant. I don't know if anybody wants to speak up about any specific issues. I have a couple of specific issues that I could share, but I think one of the things we need to do is include the community users, the athletic council members, on this new policy of communications. One of the things that's currently in process is the Fairfax County Baseball Council requires any 90-foot ball field users to communicate directly with the DSAs. So is this policy that NCS not speak to the schools? Does that affect the community users? Are we not supposed to talk to the schools? I mean, we need to see the policy so we understand it, I think.
I greatly appreciate you asking me that question in that regard. I think there is some myth and folklore that's going on about the policy. The policy is very simple. Anything to do with space or scheduling a space has to involve community use. That's it. Never have I said that you're not allowed to talk to the schools or the groups. In fact, we had that situation. George Mason was using Centerville Diamond, and it's a new situation, and they needed to talk to DSA. Not a problem. Talk. We're not restricting any of those conversations, but when you're talking about the space and renting per se, or utilizing and scheduling that space, that's the only time community use needs to get in. That is all. And so what we see is the community user talks with NCS. That's your advocate that schedules your events within our system. NCS talks to us, and we talk to the schools, and it's just a matter of scheduling and scheduling spaces. We're not prohibiting ever of you as a user group that needs to comply with any rules to talk to a field or about field reps or the groundskeeping or anything of that nature, by all means, still, I'm not restricting that, nor would I ever restrict that because that's necessary conversations. But if you're talking about scheduling, that's something community use because we've been mandated by our last audit and by leadership to manage the scheduling of FCPS facilities and grounds. And that's the only thing we're doing. When I had a conversation this afternoon with Bill Kern, he expressed that there has been some misgivings or misunderstandings about what we're doing. When I explained to him, he's like, that makes perfect sense. It's just about the space and scheduling of the space. That's all community use has to be a part of. What had happened before and what we were out of was NCS would call the DSAs, they would make an arrangements. We were never involved in that, nor did we ever know that that was happening. So we just need to know what's happening at our schools and when it's happening. I am here to advocate and to help all scheduling of all space. That is the definition of my position that I have with community use.
Okay,
So,
I know, Lula, I'm going to give the floor back to you. I know I've talked quite a bit here, but I do want to come back at the end and make another comment.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for this information, Vicki. I'm telling you, I'm processing this, and as I'm processing this, I'm feeling incredibly alarmed by the process. Sorry about that. Let me turn this off. So when you mentioned, first of all, when you first shared the process, the first thought that came to my mind was relationships. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this for 30 some years. And I coached high school as well in Fairfax County and Arlington County. I coached at West Springfield for many, many years. So I know most of all the athletic directors, and I have great relationships with them in terms of where my organization is located, and we work really, really well together, especially when the football team goes an hour after their community use permitted time. So initially, when I was listening to you, I felt like, are we going to lose those relationships? Because those relationships are so valuable. And I'm glad to see you shaking your head, number one. But then back to really trying to process this new process, I'm thinking NCS has 4 or 5 schedulers. And when you say the 4 or 5 schedulers, when they're getting all these different issues and concerns, and those 4 or 5 schedulers are going directly to the schools to get this ironed out, because as you know, time is money in the youth industry, and those parents will use that in a New York second. So when we talk about a week or 2 weeks and you plan events 6 weeks out, that's an issue. But more importantly, I'm thinking with this process that's bottlenecked already with the different number of schedulers that NCS has. My question to you is, when you say they've got to go to you instead of going to their different regions, schools and athletic directors, who is manning the questions when it gets to your department?
What type of questions are you speaking of? We have individuals, 3 individuals that are monitoring the email that we created just for NCS communications. I hired a part-time person, Cindy Hall, retiree, which was a retiree, which I was so happy to get back around, just to help with the NCS communications coming in around. I see this quite differently, and I no offense here, but I see us as being more efficient than less efficient, because when we have this coming in, we now can be a part of all the issues that are going on. I was bypassed. What's happened, what I've also heard, when I said I've heard positive from internal and external. Around the internal is, I have gotten, I don't know how many calls from DSAs and from the schools themselves thanking me, because a lot of the calls they were fielding could have been in an email. I mean, that's more to their plate. Their plate is like this, but now they have trays because our schools have so much on them. And I'm trying to help them too, as a user, to maybe help them eliminate some of the phone calls and emails that they get, by streamlining our process. So, which makes it so much easier for all. And I agree with you, Lloyd, that this is new. We've only been 16 days into this. I get that. But the 16 days has been very, very productive and smooth on our end. I would definitely love, and I have not heard anything in writing really, other than, of the problems that you as the users are hearing and having. So I'd love to hear what problems the user and the groups have from the athletic council are having, because I have not. So maybe that would give me a better perspective in order to answer some questions.
I appreciate that. And I think that's where Gary's recommendation is, during your meetings, having these meetings, that you do have several end users or community user groups within that meeting, because I will just say, and it's just too many levels right now, and I'm trying to process everything that I'm hearing tonight, but I'm very alarmed. I'm very, very alarmed by it, especially because the timeline between the time there's an issue with a community user and then going to their point of contact with NCS, and now hearing that it's going to have to come to your office in an email in order for you to, it just seems like it becomes a bit of a bottleneck. And that, I'm just saying, and like I said, Vicki, I haven't processed it. I'm just hearing it for the first time. So please understand that. Yeah. But I just wanted to let you know, for the first time hearing this, it's quite alarming to me as an end user.
And let me jump right in. I actually would like to, Mark, he's had his hand up for a while. As you guys know, Mark was a former athletic director for 30 some years in the county, and we hired him to be help us with the part in the schools. And I think he has a different perspective because he's been from both sides. And so, Mark, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? Because he's also our operations manager, and he's directly with our my schedulers every day, whereas I'm not right in it. And I'm sure he may want, as he told me the other day, I think he wants to quit. But but Mark, what are your thoughts? I do want to let you have the floor for a minute.
There's a couple things. One, I think the response back from community use with all our emails has been excellent. In the last, whatever it is, 16 days, we've gotten responses back. Now, sometimes those responses are looking into it or whatever that may be. My biggest fear is that sometimes the questions aren't being asked the same way to the people in the school side that I may ask. And Vicki knows this. Vicki and I have had this conversation. She knows that this is not something that I endorse fully at the beginning, because it's just not my makeup. I'm a relationship person, and I want to be able to call a DSA, and I want to be able to say, hey, we got this, can you help us? And Vicki says they weren't included. I'm not sure that's entirely true. We didn't separate them. We tried to make a plan of letting them know, but it wasn't good enough from the FCPS side. So that's why I think we've kind of gone to this particular side. The comments from the DSAs, Vicki, and again, this is not to, I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody, but I'm hearing the exact opposite from DSAs talking to me. That's what I'm hearing. Why are we doing this? Why can't we ask you if we need something, or why can't you tell us, this and that? And I said, well, this is the new policy. This is what we're doing. So as much as you're saying that DSAs are thanking you for taking stuff off their plate, we're kind of
not all.
Okay, well, I'm just saying I'm getting many that have contacted us to say the other side. So again, it's a work in progress. I mean, I just want to give you an example of something that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this or not. I'll probably get my hand slapped. Lori, just close your eyes.
Go ahead.
With the stadium field that's used in this, we don't ever schedule the stadium field, but we have user groups that have put money into practice fields. And we've always told them in the past, talk to the DSAs at the school. If there's time on their stadium field for you to use, because maybe their practices end at 8 or their games end at 9 and they don't need it, then you guys can use that space there. We've always that's been kind of our, Gary, does that make sense to you? And just in terms of what we've always said, so that, like you said, Vicky, you don't like to see space sitting out there. Well, if practices are over at 7 o'clock on the stadium field and we're not allowed to schedule it, or we're not allowed, we don't schedule it, it's being used because the group that maybe has had a partnership can go there and use it. And I know there's some inequities maybe that go with that, but it was a way for us to be able to get more space in a situation where we don't have space. And that's kind of one of the things that so we're not doing that anymore, or user groups are, because that's a scheduling issue. User groups aren't supposed to talk to the DSAs about that because it's a scheduling issue. And so that's just a couple of things. Again, I think the response time, Vicky, I think you were spot on. I think we're getting responses. We may not like the answers that we're getting sometimes because we don't think the question maybe is being answered. But other than that, I think it's a start of a new process for us. Karen, does that make sense? And Lloyd, I hope I didn't reframe it poorly.
If I may jump in just 1 second around about the DSAs, that's why I met with Bill Kearns this afternoon, and I did go to the last DSA meeting. And one of the emphasis that I said in that DSA meeting is I want actual scheduling and blocks of the fields. If you're not going to use it, don't block it. So I am working with Bill Kern because I think that's one of the biggest issues that we've had too with schools that are blocking. We had 8 schools that were blocking out for potential rain dates if they, maybe have something. And I saw Bill Kerr and I have had 3 meetings on that so far about how he needs to have the DSAs not schedule those. So I'm working at it for both angles. I'm not just working at from that angle. I'm working from the DSA to have true and actual blocks. If you need it, by all means. By all means. If you don't give me a maybe, but if you need it, schedule it. But if you don't, then leave it open for the community user. So those are the conversations I'm having internal. When I say this is an internal and external solution that we're finding, it's not just one side. I know it feels that way probably to the athletic council, like we're just picking on you. I'm not. I'm trying to make the best of all worlds blend together. And this is not just my solution. This was also a conversation that's been had for quite a few meetings from my boss, which is Paul Hatcher, and Jeff has been included in these meetings. And we've had conversation with these of how we best can fill all needs and serve our community well. So that's what I have to say on that.
Looks like Rob Honey's had his hand up, and then Mike Thompson.
Sorry, I'm been listening in the middle of baseball practice. So as most people know, I sort of come at this from both sides, being the head baseball coach here and very familiar with activities offices over the last 30 years, but also the community use side. And I think there's many challenges, and I agree that I have the same concerns from a community use side. And I think there are even DSAs, as Mark said, several that have concerns as well. And part of it is something like the committee that we put together a few months back, having something like that, where I know John was involved, where we're all talking, all speaking the same language, expressing our concerns. There's dozens of issues that arise that NCS, for the most part, has been able to handle through Mark and Karen and others. And I think our concerns from the community use side, are those going to be handled? I know from the DSA meeting a week or two ago, there was some talk about, hey, book the field whenever you need to book the field. This is to the schools. And there's been, at least in the baseball world, an understanding of when green days could happen, when people would, get off the field, when weekend in-season use would occur, when blackout dates for fields for Bermuda whatever's happening to fix up fields, conversions, whatever, only one per, district, all these kinds of agreements. And with the schools pretty much having free reign to close them for whatever they want, that's scary because it's already been an issue that NCS has always helped us with. But I agree with Vicky that the activities offices are way overworked already, and anything that helps them is a good thing. But it is scary from the things that I've heard over the last couple of weeks, that schools may close their fields even more for, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you name it. So that's my concern, and some of the things that Gary talked about earlier with design and construction and other things.
And I'm just going to add in real quick on my end that it's gyms that get closed down. Gyms are getting closed down in the spring for sports practices, spring sports, when there aren't any spring sports that play in the gym, as far as I know. So that there's some things that we'll have to work through together to figure it out, Rob. So I think as much as fields, I think gyms would be the same way. That was my point there.
Yeah, and I think just to add one thing, I mean, there's just, and I would assume Vicky's office knows this, but I mean, it is literally Thursdays getting, a field or a gym canceled for homecoming the next night, or a Friday night football game, and being able to react and handle those situations. That's again, it's been 16 days, so nobody, I don't think, is speaking on the good or the bad for those 16 days, because it's certainly not enough time to assess. But that's my input, sort of from both sides.
If I may interject here, that is one of the reasons why, and this is never, as far as I know, been an approach that's been from both sides. That's why I'm going to the DSA meetings. I'm having meetings with Bill Kern, which is over top of the DSAs, to say, if you need it, fine, justify it. If you don't need it, open it, and we need to have it and have valid scheduling for them. Mark, the situation you're talking to, that was one of the reasons why I raised it up with Bill Kern, because I don't see why they would block the gyms. If it was a DSA block, that blocked the gym. The school, when we're talking about blocks, that's the DSAs. That's why I've been focusing on talking with them about the need to be fair and accurate in their schedulings and blocks. So I'm working on both ends of it, both sides of it.
Yeah, I think, Vicky, if I could just add one other thing, I think community use, I think summing it up for all of us community users, again, I wear both hats, would be just making sure that we feel like we have an advocate when fields are closed for probably not very good reasons, or gyms. And just knowing who that advocate is, and that advocate is for community use and working on our behalf, community users, that is. So I think that's a big piece of this. I don't know if Gary and Lula and everybody else would agree with that, but I think that's a big part of it. Thanks.
Mike Thompson.
Thanks. Vicky, first, thanks for, not only your efforts here, but with all you do. I know that you have a thankless job given all the different users that you deal with. I know that you have to oversee every dance recital, every Boy Scout meeting, every club every athletic club that wants to come use the fields and gyms and stuff. So I appreciate that. I think that the concerns, at least to me, from what I'm hearing and what my concerns are, is that I get the desire to manage. I think the fear you're hearing is that that will become micromanaging. By that, I mean that, for example, and I'll use Mark Martino, who in his life and my life together, when he was at Lake Braddock and I was doing stuff at Lake Braddock. As a community partner, we raised lots of money and made it possible to put in lots of fields. There were times when Mark would come to me and say, hey, Mike, this team has an issue. Can we move some things around so that we can use some of the time that your club is allocated on the fields? I was like, yeah, absolutely. You know, we try to make it work and be a good partner with the school. The same way, Mark would say, hey, the field is going to be, you know, for whatever reason, we're going to be off the field at 10 o'clock Saturday morning. So you don't have to wait until 1 o'clock or whatever to use it if you want to try and get some extra games in, or somebody wants to practice. You know, there were times when the ability to get things done. And I think that you know, I look at like Disney, which has been so successful in their customer relations because they empower people on the ground to look for solutions rather than taking everything up to a central spot. But to your point, they ask everybody to report up all the issues, and so that they can understand if their policies are working, if they have to change, what all those metrics are, what all those numbers are, all the things that you're talking about. I think that in the past, there have been times when there have been good communication and less than good communication. And often that's dependent on the school, the area, the whatever. I would point out and raise that while I appreciate, first, I appreciate you doing this at a full athletic council meeting. We are taking up so much time, it may have been that we needed a committee meeting for it. But I think that, you know, I would be remiss not to bring up elementary schools. Mm-hmm. While I appreciate that we're talking a lot about DSAs and high schools, there are lots of times when elementary schools block times off or with very little notice say, oh, by the way, the PTA is doing their fun run tomorrow. So all of a sudden you can't have any games here tomorrow. There's, you know, so one, let's not lose track of the situation that doesn't involve DSAs. And frankly, I think that we've had decent relationships with DSAs, sometimes better than we've had with principals. To the issue that was brought up earlier, I think Gary brought up, you know, at least my experience has always been that the DSA wants to work with us, mm-hmm. and recognizes that often we are feeders into their programs and advocates for their programs. We are, you know, all of our parents become their future sports parents. I became the athletic booster president for a bunch of years. We all become involved. Elementary school principals don't necessarily see it that way. They see us as a pain in the butt who's here trying to, you know, use their fields when they want to do something else and whatever. So I don't want to lose track of that piece as we're thinking through the communication. But tonight, what scared me was that if everything is going to run through your office, which, and I can understand the desire to know what's going on, but if everything's going to run through your office to the point that you're sometimes sending responses that, hey, we're working on it or something, where you guys are doing the actual execution of trying to find the solutions, that as a full spring season or fall season goes on, when not only gyms are in use, but all the fields are in use and all the rectangles and diamonds and all these other things, that the desire to manage morphs into the desire to actually control through micromanagement, and that we're not going to get solutions, and that most of the solutions become one way, i.e., hey, Mike, will you give us some time so that we can have our tryouts go longer because we had bad lightning last night, or whatever, and me going, hey, we you know, this just happened, can we use an extra hour of a field someplace? And like, no, you have to go through the central authority, but I'm just going to come to you when I want to take stuff from you. Because that is the other issue. The other issue is there are DSAs who don't always recognize that we do have MOUs. Sometimes folks in the county forget that there are actual MOUs that govern the use of the fields, and that it's a partnership and not just a grant, especially if that DSA was not there when the fundraising went on for those fields, and when some of us were working our butts off to not only bring fields to the school that our programs used, but to get turf fields brought in all over the county, and in parts of the county at schools that couldn't afford them. And so I think what you're hearing is probably fear of, hey, there's a new process, and fear that it will become something that maybe it's not yet. Maybe some people think it is, to your point about rumors. But I think that we should all be very, we on our end need to be careful not to assume things, but hopefully you'll be open-minded enough to work with us to keep changing the policy on those side things and be open enough not to micromanage it.
Yeah, I can assure you I am not by any means a micromanager. It takes way too much energy than what I'm willing to put around. Central authority, no, I don't want to become that. I don't want to be that. I just want to know, just be part of the conversation of all conversations. And I'm remiss to say that our DSAs are doing an amazing, outstanding job. Do not think that I'm pounding on them, because I'm not. Around there's been some loose conversation, looseness in policies and procedures and communications, and all I'm doing is trying to tighten it up. And you're absolutely right about the elementary schools. They're one of the ones that absolutely are happy as all kinds that we're taking this off of their plate, because they have so much to do. A lot of times the person who does community use is not like the high schools or the middle schools, which have the after school specialists, or the high schools that have the ESAs. They have one lonely little person in the office that has to do it all. So that puts a lot on them. I am much more comfortable with relaxing the high schools in some of the regards of this process than the middle schools and elementary, because I have to be a stronger advocate for them. And I've never, and please, myth and folklore, I've never said that they can't have those conversations of the one-offs and things like that. You can still have those established conversations. Just let me know what's going on with that. Have it through us or have it with us. Hey, I talked to the DSA. I just want to let them know that we're going to have 2 more hours at this one, and it's all cool, for that. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't want to chokehold this to where it's so tight, but I also don't want to be left out of the party, left
Sure.
out of the events, for that. So please understand that this is a work in progress. I get that. I am a very communicative person, and I will be at your meetings from now on. I promise you that. Because I've been absent for a little bit too long, and probably that's on me. That's on me. I didn't know that things were not being addressed well in my absence. And also Bill's usually here, and Bill loves to talk, so he kind of covers up some things. So I definitely will be more proactive in this. And I think will take all of us to find the right solution. I really do. And that's what I'm working and striving toward. Don't think that because like I said, I don't have the energy for micromanagement, because your lead in your conversation, Mike was absolutely right. We cover a lot, which gives me a great vantage point too, and where maybe potential problems are, because we do cover a lot. And NCS is about 35% of our users that we have, which is significant. It's a very significant users. And I value the fact that NCS, does what they do. I'm just trying to streamline the processes just a little bit more. That's it.
Well, I'll throw 2 things at you real quick, and then I'll mute myself and get out of Gary's and Lula's way. One, hold all the other organizations to whatever standard you hold us to, especially at the elementary schools. By that, I'll specifically call out PTAs and things. Oh. And I say that as somebody who was on my elementary school PTA for 7 years, including president for a year. And often the principal will say, oh yeah, you can have the cafeteria for that. Oh yeah, you can use the fields for that, without thinking about what the impacts are. So I would just encourage you to try, if you're going to do this, hopefully do it in a way that protects all of us in that process. I think that would be a good thing to remember. And then second, the other recommendation I'd make, and maybe it can come out of the committee that Gary's doing or whatever, is consider maybe, and I hesitate to use these words because I know they have a connotation, but I don't know how to express myself otherwise. That is a kind of a small citizens advisory committee of some sort. Maybe there's a group of 3 or 4 people or whatever that can give you feedback, be there to understand as you're working through some of these issues, because there are people, it may be a user that does a dance recital, every year and just goes through the process that can give you insight into it, all the way to organizations that are using the gyms and the fields every year. They all go through the process, and they may have insight that could be really helpful, because all of us sometimes get caught up in the idea that we only look at it through our viewpoint, our vantage point. So you may want to consider getting folks involved that way.
If I may respond to those 2 excellent points. One, I give you my honest, word? I don't know what to say. My commitment. Okay, there we go. It's been a long day. Around my honest commitment to definitely bring all sides in and hear all sides, and to be as communicative as I possibly can. And you stole my thunder there, Mike. One of the things that community use is striving toward, and we're kicking off, is community outreach meetings that will be open to all here at Gatehouse. We'll have to have people like registered only because we have capacity levels. But I want to have those community outreach groups, and we'll have some at different locations too. I think I mentioned this in our meeting, Mark, when we was talking about with DSAs, having meetings with them and having community groups that would use a particular, like if you use Centerville, going to Centerville for the DSAs to have, communication back to you. So we do have quite a few things for community outreach that I think we are laxed in, and we have not reached our potential. COVID kind of if you saw my plans from 2019, you would see that this is a continuation, because I have all these plans that we were planning to kick off, and then COVID hit. I'm going back to those plans. I am a big, strong advocate for community outreach, and I want to hear to make sure that we're doing good. We did start a survey of our users for the dance clubs and everything. We do send them a survey. How was your experience? How can we get better? So we do have that kind of community outreach already. But I want to have an open forum where individuals that can come out and tell me what you think, not just with this committee, but with our users in general. So you're still my thunder. 2019, I had so many things planned around, but now that we can get back to it.
Jason, we have a couple more hands raised.
Yeah. Lloyd's got his hand raised, and then Gary and Lula.
So thank you. I don't want to prolong things, but Vicky, I'm glad you're talking about community outreach. I just want to let you know that we have school staff on a committee that we've been working with throughout the pandemic to develop a framework for inclusive community engagement that I think would be intriguing to the athletic council, to ensure that the outreach and the engagement work that you all plan to do is in partnership with us, with the athletic council, as well as with the county staff from NCS, to ensure that that we are engaging the most vulnerable and the folks who typically don't have access, like this group was put together to advocate for and to support. So I just want to make sure that's on your radar, and that we can work with you, much like we're doing with the what is it called, School Family Partnerships Office, I think, unless I'm butchering that name. But encourage you to definitely use us also with that engagement piece, so that we can also loop in the athletic council in any way that those principles kind of define and outline for us.
Okay.
It's just Gary and Lula. You guys are the only ones with their hands raised now.
Oh,
Okay.
I see somebody with their hand raised. Is that Gary?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So I just want to go back through a couple of quick points and follow up. One is my comment, Lloyd, about the timing issue. I do want to clarify that the subcommittee that we have we know that's going to take time, and whatever policies or protocols that Vicky's putting in place, that would be the issue for, seasonal review and how this is working and follow up. My concern is more based on what Lula was saying, where we're just hearing about this and the immediacy of the concerns, Vicky, is for the spring season. I mean, you talk about this implementation on March 1. It's 16 days. The spring season, which is the largest, busiest time for all seasonal sports, and we have new practices in place. And I am sure that even though the rest of the council is probably tired of hearing all of this, but I'm sure they would echo the comment that the concern is that if there's any kind of backlog or any kind of chokehold that you mentioned or anything of that nature in this spring season, it's going to create problems. And understood that, like Karen said initially, any kind of new policy is going to come with some hiccups, and we all understand that. But minimizing those hiccups, because there's a lot of things going on in the spring season, and it can be frustrating. Second point, I want to thank Mike for bringing up the elementary schools, because that is really, we talk a lot about the high schools and the DSAs and talking to them and doing all that stuff, but the elementary schools and the principals and the PTAs, I have a perfect example where we got notification just a week ago that, one of my elementary schools, the gym's closed because of spring pictures. Okay, can't they do the spring pictures in the cafeteria? That's where we always do them. Why do they have to close the gym, for spring? But, those are one of, in the last 16 days, I've received 37 cancellations in my program alone. And a lot of those could have been resolved at the beginning of the year. They should have known that stuff. So those are kind of some of the issues. The other point that I want to make is I'm seeing cancellations in a couple of my programs, and maybe others are as well, that maybe you can look at. And if you're going to be an advocate for the community users, which I appreciate you using that term, is we all understand that schools are having difficulty finding coaches. We all understand that. It's a challenge. A lot of the coaches are no longer required to be teachers. You're getting the coaches from outside. They have jobs. They can't practice in that typical school use time of 3 to 5 p.m. or 3:30 to 5 or whatever it is. They can't do that anymore. So what we see on the community user side, especially the youth community user side, is we get canceled from 6 to 8, and then we're told we can use the field from 8 to 10. Well, I've got second graders. I can't tell a second grade mom or dad that, hey, your kid needs to come to practice from 8 to 9:30. I can't do that. While the high school coach who has a full-time job and is coming to coach, why can't we offer that time, that 8 to 10 p.m. time slot, to the high school coaches who coach high school kids who all stay up till 11 o'clock at night, and reserve that prime time for community users? And like Rob Honey said, we're feeding the schools with their future players. If we're getting kicked out and we're not going to be able to utilize these fields and gyms at a normal hour for these second, third, fourth, fifth graders, it's going to shut us down. It's just going to be a challenge. So my comment to you, Vicki, would be, if you're going to be an advocate, that would be something I think a lot of these council members would agree is that's something that is a struggle for us, is the high school saying, well, you can't use it. You can get on the field at 7, but I need it until 7 because I got practice. So that's just a general comment. And then I'll close by, and I'll get on the mute like Mike said, but I'll close with saying I do appreciate, Vicki, you being in here. I do appreciate the work that you have to do. I just would like Lula said, I'm very nervous about this, and I'm very concerned, and I would like to see input from the community users in part of your process that you're using. Thanks.
So I would just like to just add just this one piece as I'm still processing, and that is I concur with Gary. There's a number of us that have had our community use decreased because of coaching conflicts or because of teams and this, that, and the other. My 3 boys that I raised that played at Edison High School, they were very gracious with the community use. And because their coach needed more time or wanted more time to practice, he would go on the front end and the boys would go at 6 o'clock in the morning to do their practices before school. So they didn't impede into the community use time. But having said that, we are getting squeezed out. And as I mentioned, when I mentioned earlier, our parents are all about that registration fee. And so now what we're getting is, if community use was 5:30 to 9, and we are paying $8 per player for field allocation, why hasn't that fee decreased? That's just something that's being said. I think that needs to just sort of be a part of the discussion as we move forward, and our community use time is getting more limited. And that's, the parents, because large clubs like Gary's club, I know how many players you have in your club in the spring. So those thousands and thousands and thousands of players times $8, and then their parents are saying, well, our community use hours have been cut in half. Why are we still paying that $8 allocation fee? And then the $5.50 for gym. So it's just something that I'm just sharing with you to take into consideration that's being said in the community. And that's just my 2 cents.
If I could address that just for a second, FCPS is only charging $2, and the other $6, I guess, is an NCS fee, because we're only allocating $2 per player.
I think it's all relative.
I don't know how that goes, but the point is taken. The point is taken.
Thank you.
Absolutely, the point is taken. But I'm just confused on the $8. I'm not sure where that comes from.
It's separate. It's separate than the 2, Vicky.
Okay.
Yeah, it's separate. Yeah.
It's an allocation fee. Okay, well, thank you all for that incredible discussion, and thank you, Vicky. We really do appreciate you sharing all this information. Really do appreciate it. We're going to move right along. Jason, we're going to go move into the sports rep reports.
All right. Baseball Council, Rob Honey.
He's coaching. He doesn't have a report. I'm just kidding.
My report will be quick, Lula. Practice is ending. And some community users are trying to get on my field, so I've got issues, Vicky. I'm kidding. That's a total joke. We are all good here. So nothing to report. Most baseball starts up on the weekend of the 27th, so we're gearing up and ready to go with Little League opening days. High school started games on Monday, so we're excited for the nice weather this week and the spring season. That's it from baseball.
All right. Thanks, Rob. I don't believe anyone's here for basketball or fast pitch. Football, Ted?
We just had our Hall of Fame banquet last week, and a number of people on the call were there in attendance, and one of the people on the call was honored. Great success looking back to 2021. And at this point, we are engaged in our spring flag football across the county. There's no one organizing league, but it's typically internal house leagues, and so that is starting up as we speak.
Awesome. Thank you, Ted. Lacrosse Council, Marianne?
Yes. So before I give the sport out report, I just have a question. Is anything in the chat from these teams meetings, is that officially part of the meeting, or is it only spoken voice?
I try to incorporate the comments from the chat as well into the minutes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. And I'm going to let Jeff Deal speak. He is the chairperson for the NVYLL lacrosse organization, and he has a couple of questions on the wording on the permits, COVID related. So Jeff, and I'm trying to get him to replace Dave Paddock, but he won't give me his resume. So Jeff, are you able to speak?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Marianne. I asked at the end of last meeting in the chat, I was the one that asked about the Forward Virginia Phase 3 guidelines still being mentioned on field permits for spring, and they're also still mentioned on the NCS website. I believe, Karen, you mentioned that you were going to follow whatever FCPS is doing as far as COVID guidelines for outdoor field sports. And I believe Bill said that we're pretty much done with all COVID restrictions for outdoor field sports. So my follow-up question that wasn't answered, that was in the chat last week, are we going to see new permits or new cover letters or something? And is the website going to be updated to reflect the fact that there are no more COVID restrictions for outdoor sports at this time?
Yeah, I'll let Mark or Jason answer that. They've been working with our COVID guy, Chris Scales, on this stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, I think we met with.
have we updated it, guys?
Yeah, it's been updated on the website, and we got the latest information from our Fairfax County Department of Health. We went over what was on there. They told us what to take off. They told us what we should add. We worked through that. So I'm not sure we're going to send out. I think it obviously was after the original permits were out. But it's definitely everything going out from now on, and I think it should be updated on the website. Jason, am I correct on that it is updated on the website, what we were told by the Fairfax County Department of Health?
Yeah, and I can send it out to the council, like what's on the website now and the new permits and everything, since all the spring permits went out before the new language changed. So if you guys want new permits, just ask your scheduler and all the new language will be on there. But I'll also send an email tomorrow to the council.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason.
I just posted the link where I still see mention of Forward Virginia Phase 3. Is that the updated language?
I'm pulling it up right now.
It's at the bottom of that page.
Oh, gotcha. It looks like they forgot to take that part off. Because our homepage, if you go to the homepage, it's updated.
So we'll get that taken off.
Yeah,
Jason, if I could suggest, it's not. I don't think it's very difficult for you all to send an email to all the permit holders. So maybe instead of just sending it to the athletic council, you send the new language to all the permit holders. Would that work?
Yeah, we can do that as well.
I think that'd be terrific. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. We have our season's about ready to start in the next week or two. But other than that, that's all we have. Thank you.
All right, next is Soccer Council. Lula and
Trish, do you have a report?
We have a ton of kids. Where are they coming from?
I know.
We're over 1,700. My poor NCS scheduler, he hears from me almost daily, if Jason doesn't. But I'm so excited that all the kids are getting out. We just have to find a field for them all. That's it.
Thank you. That's it, Jason.
Okay. Volleyball, Rob and Marie.
I'm filling in for Rob. He's on travel. He did mention that he's going to reach out to Bill. I don't think Bill's on the call about setting up that meeting we were supposed to do this past month to talk about boys volleyball. We're also going to be initiating, myself and him and some other people are going to be initiating discussions regarding bringing more organized sand volleyball to Fairfax. There's a lot of sand programs in Sterling, out in Dulles, and further out in Virginia, but we really don't have anything here in Fairfax. Also, the club season is already halfway done. So the Fairfax-based clubs are preparing or playing currently in national qualifying tournaments. And all the elementary, middle school, and high school age boys and girls programs are going strong in the spring. And last but not least, we just want to give a shout out to Herndon High School's Akasha Anderson, who was awarded the Virginia Gatorade Player of the Year for volleyball this year. That's it. Thank you.
That's it, Lula.
Okay, very good. Matters of interest from governing bodies, school board.
Yeah, it looks like Megan McLaughlin signed on. So Megan.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Sorry for joining late. We are in the midst of our new superintendent search, as some of you might know. And so I had an unexpected meeting where I had to go over to headquarters and look at some documents. And we have a big meeting tomorrow ahead of us. So anyway, what I wanted to just let you all know is that it's my understanding there is another scheduled meeting for Friday with Chairman McKay's working group on stadium bathrooms. So I'm looking forward to getting an update and participating on that call. As I shared with all of you at a prior meeting, I just think this is a high priority. Last night, I was joining Supervisor Walkinshaw of the Braddock District's annual budget town hall, where a call came in about our stadiums and athletic facilities. And I gave a really strong plug again that, this is something that affects many of our residents in terms of quality of life, not just the athletes who use the stadium, but all of our rec leagues and our visitors. And so one disappointing news that maybe some of you heard is that State Senator Scott Soroval had put in a request with ESSER funds at the state level, hoping that we would be able to get some of that funding to pay for the utility work and plumbing that would need to get done based on how these stadiums are structured. That was about a $5 million ask, but it's my understanding it did not make the cut. So that's unfortunately not additional monies that would have been nice to come from the state. But for anyone who's been following the county budget projections right now, because of the property values skyrocketing, which I know they also recognize we've got to attend to, but the county executive's budget still, with all of the raises in there to cover prior years, there's like an $80 million cushion in there as they look at the tax rate. And then we also have the whole car tax issue with the artificial inflation of cars. I mention all this because the cost of doing stadium bathrooms, as we all know, is, this is the year that if we were going to finally have one-time money to be able to do it, it's the year. Best estimates, again, that I understood was that, it could be anywhere in that range of $12 to $15 million. But if you have both the schools and the county government, and maybe when we do have these conversations with the funding, how to get that done, I just think this is the year to really try and put the plan together. So I would welcome your guys' suggestions as I'm going to get on that call on Friday, but I don't want us to miss an opportunity here in the grand scheme of the wealth and size of our county to not get this done at this stage.
Thank you, Megan. I had the pleasure of running into Chairman McKay. He lives in the Lee Mount Vernon area, and he's extremely supportive of this initiative. Very, very supportive.
That's great. Well, like I said, I will know more on Friday on how committed and how expeditious this commitment might arrive at. And as I shared with all of you, I just want to bring the strength of the Fairfax County Athletic Council to this conversation if as needed. So I'll just continue to keep you all stay tuned. And if anybody has any other questions on the school side of things, I'll try to either answer them or make sure Bill Curran circles back too.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any hands. So thank you so much, Megan. Park Authority?
Good evening, everybody. Before I get started here with all the project list, just to let everybody know, we're beginning the spring maintenance activities on FCPS athletic fields. We're completing infield renovations, starting turf management now. Mowing and infield grooming will begin in late March and early April. Synthetic turfs are in the process of getting their deep cleaning, and there will be GMAX testing this month. Beyond that, Jason has the list up. I've highlighted in red all the projects that are in, and most of them are fence projects in progress. We're hoping to have them done within the next couple of weeks. As you can see, Patriot Park North, they've upped the percentage. I'm trying to get a little bit more detail on where that project stands so I can share a little bit more information. Our planning and development team our design team are not been so forthcoming with information. So they say it's 35% complete. So, and then I also put down there, you can see I've added all the synthetic replacements that we believe the high schools are going to be doing this summer. FCPS, if it's something different, let us know, but this is what we believe will be the schedule for all the synthetic replacements for the summer. Other than that, that's about it.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any
Thank you.
questions?
Well, Lula, there's something I need to add into that process. You all need to know about something that is going on in the budget cycle and the budget process that could have an impact on the park authority and the ability to provide certain services and to build certain facilities. So one of the things that I found out early on, and you know, I started this process as, hey, you're a coach, and hey, you're involved in the club, and hey, get involved with the athletic council. And then Pat Harity had appointed me also to the Park Authority Board. And I learned a tremendous amount about what the Park Authority does and the way things in the county work, including around the bonds. One of the issues that has been going on is typically the Park Authority has had typically a bond every 4 years. And in that bond cycle, it was typically something less than $100 million. There'd be a $100 million park bond with some of that, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but 10 of it, 12 of it, whatever, might go to the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority. There was an analysis done of all of the facilities that need renovation in the system. It's everything. I mean, keep in mind the Park Authority does all the historical stuff in the county. All you know, it's the trails, it's the parking lots, it's all this stuff, bathrooms, and it's a huge number of what we are behind on trying to do. But there's also the need to meet the desire to meet the community needs for building more fields and doing things like that. So and we also have significant commitments around the rec centers. And a reminder about the rec centers. Way back in the day, the schools wanted to have pools, and the Board of Supervisors said, "Wait, we're not sure we want to make every school. We're not sure we want every school to have a pool." So they talked to the Park Authority. Park Authority said, "Okay, we can do pools, but they're money pits, and so we want to build rec centers around them so that we can recoup some of the money and try and make things work." Why am I telling you all that? Because the requirement to meet the needs for the rec centers by itself there was a big study done. There's a need to put, you know, in excess of $200 million into the rec centers over the course of the next several years. There's also the need to do all these other projects. Well, this $100 million bond is usually where a lot of that comes from. So when you guys see a new field get built, that is typically with bond dollars. In fact, often you might see a lot of the other projects done are bond dollars. Right now, what they're looking at doing is shifting from a bond every 4 years. Oh, and I should say, the request was being made to let us spend more money. We were limited to a certain amount of money we could spend each year. We wanted to increase that amount, and we wanted to ask for more bond money in that 4-year cycle. The county has come back and suggested that instead of a 4-year cycle, we move to a 6-year cycle, and that in that 6-year cycle, we have just the $100 million. I will tell you that I sat through an analysis that Park Authority staff did last week. Basically, the rec centers by themselves will absorb most, if not all of that money. Because of the cycles, because of 30-year life cycle, we have 9 rec centers. Someone has to build a 10th, and those renovations cost 40, 50, 60, 70 million dollars. This could have a significant impact on the ability for the park authority to meet future needs that users may have. This would mean, for example, that if there was a desire to go add in 3 new fields someplace, that we would probably have to look to the county and or general fund money to try and make that work. Now, this requires, it's a 2-part puzzle. It's the bond money that is accessible every so often and voted on by the voters, and the amount of money that you can spend in a given year, because we want to make sure that the county always keeps its AAA bond rating. So that's why you guys may say, oh wait, you just passed this bond and it's projects that are built over, say, 4 or 5 years or whatever. So there's the need to think about how to approach this bond question, how to increase the throughput so that we can meet those community needs. And I just wanted to let you all know what was going on there. I may send around significantly more information in the not too distant future to this group, but it may be one of those issues that you all care about and may want to let your opinion be known, both to the Park Authority Board and to any other board or organization that you might want to let your voice be known to. But this could significantly change the approach and the ability for the Park Authority to do some of the things that you all are used to us doing in the way that we do them now. And Kurt couldn't say any of those things, so it was left to the board member to say all those things.
Megan, got your hand raised.
I do. You know, I'm going to take my school board hat off partially for this commentary. Very proud resident for more than 25 years in Fairfax, and my husband for now almost 50 years. And, you know, when I served on the turf, synthetic turf task force, I really got to know our park authority partners and teased all the time that we needed to have a penny for parks. You know, we have a penny for watershed, we need a penny for parks. And now that we know a penny yields almost 30 million a year, to what Mike said, I really wanted to take a moment and emphasize this. I raised 3 boys in this county, all athletes, and my husband and I are both former competitive athletes. And it continues to be a reason that we are remaining here as empty nesters, because this county has incredible park and rec offerings. But we will jeopardize the attractiveness of this county to surrounding districts if we don't commit to it. And so, Mike, I just want to say thank you for being, as usual, very knowledgeable and strong in your voice in advocating for this. I'm sitting here shaking my head wondering who thought that on a park authority already being asked to be self-sustaining, which I don't even think is necessarily appropriate for what we want in this county. I think we need to be investing more. And I would hope that that this council can really be a strong partner and voice in this with the park authority. I think there's not enough residents who understand what Mike just shared with us, because it's the loudest voices of advocates in other arenas that are getting the attention of the Board of Supervisors. And we need to really start generating the fact that we know this is a highly athletic area in this region, Fairfax County. And I think we might have to wake the sleeping, giants and let them know, hey, we can't take this for granted anymore. So Mike, please send as much as you can and provide as much strategic, you know, a guidance on what you think we could do. And Lula, I'll just apologize in advance because I probably way overstepped everything I've just said right now.
No worries. Thank you so much. And there aren't any questions. I was going to say something to Mike, but I think I won't. Yeah, no, I love you.
Marcia. Oh, sorry. Marcia's got her hand raised.
Marcia.
Well, since Megan overstepped, I'm going to do the same.
Okay,
and I am stepping out of every category I'm in except as a resident of Fairfax County for over 31 years. My understanding is that some of the projects that are supposed to be in the planning stage may be pushed back, and that would include Audrey Moore Rec Center, the oldest rec center in the county. I remember when my oldest, who is now in her 30s, had an all-night grad party there, and we talked about the condition of some things. That was quite some time ago. That was in the planning stages, and my understanding is that that's one of the projects that's being pushed back. So, you know, whether we're looking at this from the team point of view or, as Megan alluded to, the individual person point of view, what Mike said could have a very big impact. And I'll let it go there.
Thank you, Marcia. All right, moving right along. NCS.
I guess I could say a couple of things, and Lloyd, if I forget any, and you can. For us, we'll just big thing is continue to work on the communication with the schools. And then I talked to Mike Thompson today about launching the allocation committee. There's obviously a bunch of stuff that has come up over time that we need to integrate it into the allocation policy, the tournament stuff. Now, Lulu, you brought up the small-sided soccer stuff. And then, you know, the last thing I had, and this we will also talk in the allocation committee, is that resolution that you guys passed. And we have set up we're working on setting up an executive council with the executive committee on the athletic council with, I think it's Lula Gary and Lisa Mickey, to try to figure out some strategies how we're going to support that resolution. So I think we're going to do that in the next couple weeks, and then we'll bring that back to the council. You know, we feel that we might need to do some community engagement around that piece before we just send it out saying this is it. So we're gonna discuss that. So next month we'll have a report back on that, and I think that's all I have. Lloyd, did you have anything?
No, ma'am, nothing to add.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to new business. Is there any new business? Megan, I'm watching
Lula,
your eyes.
Lula, just I want to throw out there because NCS won't say it. We're coming towards summer. As we come through spring and summer, a lot of kids aren't going to be in school. I've always been amazed at the programs that NCS puts on at community centers and everything all over the county, park authority camps, things like that. One thing that often happens is they often need resources that, especially right now, are difficult for them to afford. I got a phone call one year saying they wanted to do a soccer program. Could I come up with 100 soccer balls? I just want to point out that we should all be thinking about how to support all the different programs for all those kids that aren't necessarily lucky enough to be able to afford to go do the paid summer camps and the stuff that are looking for things to do. And remember that NCS is not just fields. They're also the primary outreach to all those families, and that we as community organizations and partners should be looking to help them. And I always talk about the food banks, which are always, you know, and Christmas and stuff, but people forget about the summers and all those kids as they leave school and are looking for something to do. So be thinking about it now and consider partnering with NCS.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, old business, and help me with forum for officials. Jason? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh yeah, Mark Miena and Gary had brought up a couple meetings about the county or possibly putting on a forum for recruiting and retaining officials. Just
Oh.
because I know there's been shortages across all sports, and I mentioned it to Chris Pooley, and he thought it was also a great idea. And him being the community outreach specialist, I think he's going to be in touch with Mark Miena to see what kind of forum they want to put on and what kind of parties should be involved. So I just wanted to let you guys know that Chris Pooley thought it was a great idea as well. So he's going to use his network to try to get that ball rolling.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, if there's no further business, somebody like to make a motion? Steve McLaughlin.
Motion to adjourn.
I knew you would. Yes.
Gary Flather, second the motion.
There's no objections. So moved. Thank you, everybody. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow to those who celebrate.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Bye-bye.